Adrian runs through the forest, his athletic frame leading the group. His piercing...
Rose Thompson glances back nervously, her wide blue eyes reflecting sheer pain.
First-person POV looking back. The view reveals dense fog, shadowy...
Urquan, with his light beard and short black hair, sprints through the forest. Eleni Garcia stumbles slightly, her petite frame struggling to keep pace.
The forest floor as hurried footsteps disturb the fallen leaves, sending them scattering...
Adrian Miller turns his head slightly, his angular face and light stubble illuminate a shadowy figure, the unknown killer. Barely visible in the distance, Rose Thompson, with her wavy brown hair and wide blue eyes, looks over her
showing the four friends sprinting through the forest, their silhouettes barely visible in the thick fog.
Eleni Garcia trips over a root protruding from the forest floor. Her petite...
At Eleni's face as she lies on the forest floor, her large brown eyes wide. First-person POV, from Eleni Garcia's perspective, the view reveals the shadowy figure. Adrian Miller and Urwa Khan hesitate briefly, both turning their heads back toward
the forest as Adrian Miller, Urwa Khan, and Rose Thompson sprint for the forest as Adrian Miller, Urwa Khan, and Rose Thompson sprint for...
The towering trees of the forest loom ominously, their dark silhouettes blending with a wide view of a dark, deserted forest. Thick fog weaving through the killer's heavy black boots, crushing dry leaves on the forest floor. Illuminated gleaming knife in the killer's gloved hand reflects the moonlight as it moves steadily.
Rose Thompson, Urwa Khan, Adrian Miller, and Eleni Garcia sprint at Eileen's face, her large brown eyes wide with terror, glancing nervously over
at Adrian Miller's hand gripping at Eleni Garcia's arm as he pulls her forward through the
first-person POV from the killer's perspective, stalking the group through the trees.
Eleni trips over a protruding tree root, her body falling onto the damp forest floor. Adelina's terrified face as she lies on the ground, her large brown eyes filled...
Adrian and Urwa turning back briefly, their faces filled with hesitation and conflict, before...
The killer's boots stepping closer to Eleni, the gleaming knife visible in the frame reflect...
First-person POV from Eleni's perspective on the ground, looking up at the
Adrian and Urwa disappearing into the dense forest, their figures...
The knife held high in the killer's gloved hand, illuminated by the moonlight with fog.
The forest, showing the killer standing over Eleni's prone form, partially obscured by...
The dark, deserted forest is shrouded in thick fog, with ominous...
First-person POV looking up. The gleaming knife in the unknown killer's... Rose, Urwa, and Drian stand frozen in the foggy forest. Their figures... Rose stands to the left, her wide blue eyes filled with panic, her hand clutched tightly against... Urwa stands in the center, his deep brown eyes filled with resolve, yet tinged... Adrian stands to the right, his piercing green eyes fixed forward. Eleni's trembling hand, dirt-streaked and clutching at the damp ground. The unknown killer's dark silhouette dominates the frame, the knife gleaming.
First-person POV, looking down, the killer's gloved hand grips the knife tightly.
The screen abruptly cuts to black, leaving only the faint sound of rustling leaves in the background. The dark forest is shrouded in thick fog, with ominous tree shadows stretching across...
Rose, Urwa, and Adrian stand in the forest, their figures partially obscured. The shadow of the killer looms on the forest ground, its shape distorted by the silhouette of the killer stands tall in the background, partially hidden by the trees, and Rose begins to run, her figure blurred by motion in the surrounding fog. Her Urwa and Adrian follow Rose, their movements frantic as the knife in the killer's hand glints in the faint light, held tightly as the figure begins to...
The scene cuts to black abruptly, leaving only the sound